Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to my colleague from Oklahoma, I believe the Secretary of Defense has just responded last week and admitted that the $1 billion mission that he led against the Houthis, who do not have a navy, has not restored the transit of U.S. flag commercial vessels through the Red Sea, and in fact has resulted in the loss of 2 F-18 Hornets to the tune of $60 million apiece, as well as, I believe the last count was 7 Reaper drones to the tune of another $200 million. You are blowing through money like my fellow cadets and I did in our first Liberty after basic camp. Luckily, I didn't end up with a questionable tattoo. Your failures, Mr. Secretary, since you've taken office has been staggering. You sent classified operational information over Signal to chest thump in front of your wife, who, by the way, has no security clearance, risking service member lives in the process. You blew the $1 billion fight against the Houthis, whom, again, as my colleague says, has no navy, and yet you lost all of those aircraft. You've created such a hostile command environment that no one wants to serve as your chief of staff or work with you in other senior DoD leadership roles. But what we should all be talking about more than all of this is that you have an unjustified, un-American misuse of the military in American cities, pulling resources and attention away from core missions to the detriment of the country, the war fighters, and yes, the war fighting that you claim to love. I don't know if this is because you are too inexperienced and incompetent to understand the real threats facing our country, or if it's because you are just an unqualified yes man who can't tell the president how to keep Americans safe. You are focusing on renaming basis for Confederate generals. You said just now to Senator King that to a man and to a woman, we would rather be associated with the old Confederate names. Well, I am one of those women. I served at Fort Rucker, Alabama, a base that was named for a traitor who took arms against the United States of America, led troops who killed Americans. It was renamed for Mike Novosel, a Medal of Honor recipient, who in his citation for the Medal of Honor includes that he saved 29 American lives, to include hovering backwards in a helicopter towards an enemy bunker where a wounded American was laying and saved that person, including after being taken fire himself. I know a little something about what it takes to fly a helicopter when you've been hit by enemy fire. That was heroic. I'd rather be associated with Mike Novosel than a failed Confederate traitor. I don't know whether you are inexperienced or too incompetent, but I wonder when you will actually focus on our nation's warfighting mission. We know that California is just a deliberate, systematic, political, and dangerous campaign led by you. We should not be using our military to play cops against Americans. General Kane, as chairman, a key part of your job is to coordinate military planning across the joint force. Is the department currently incorporating into any military plans expanding the use of the reserve forces to include the National Guard or active duty troops to support domestic law enforcement, including in other locations in the United States?
Senator, you know, we careful.
No, General.
Well, it's not really a yes or no question, Madam Senator. We plan all kinds of different things.
I think it is a yes or no question.
I'm not aware of anything, but the reason why I'm answering is the tags may be looking at something that I'm not aware of.
What are you doing at your level? You're not aware of that happening at your level? Because we know that on his first day, President Trump directed U.S. Northern Command to revise its unified command plan to add new planning requirements to combat, and I quote, criminal activities. A series of follow-up executive orders continue to redirect DOD priorities to supporting domestic law enforcement, including one in April that tells DOD, and I quote, use national security assets for law and order. In other words, do law enforcement's job. I'd like to enter these executive orders into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Secretary Hegseth, you say you are focused on warfighting and warriors. These are your words. Yet you are diverting untold DoD resources and attention to a fundamentally non-military mission of domestic policing. Across the country, we have qualified police officers who are trained for that mission. They know those streets better than the Marines you deploy to Los Angeles, who normally focus on the Indo-Pacific. And you recently approved 700 more troops in 3 other states to do admin and logistics works for ICE. You say all of this is valuable training, but I would much rather have our troops do tough, realistic training relevant to high-end combat. Instead of typing in spreadsheets for ICE, they should be conducting live fire maneuver exercises. Instead of patrolling American neighborhoods and standing in front of federal buildings, they should be rehearsing call for fire missions. We have local police who can stand in front of those federal buildings. And the list of distractions goes on. You are encouraging the DoD workforce to go work for DHS in increasing numbers. You're pulling the military away from facing foreign enemies who literally say things like death to America. And you're putting troops with weapons aimed at Americans. Mr. Secretary, let the military get back to its real job. Stop forcing them to do DHSs. And if you want to be DHS Secretary, maybe you can apply for that job when you're fired from this one due to your incompetence.
Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I want to talk about the proposed Golden Dome missile defense system. There's a request to spend $25 billion in this year alone. First of all, is this system designed to intercept a full salvo attack?
Senator, it's a multi-layer system that would include different types of salvos. Obviously,
So
any
it's not
system-
just Rogue Nation. Okay.
And-
So
well, it's meant to. Yes, it's not meant to be just one nation. It could be utilized in
against
multiple
Russia or China,
scenarios.
full salvo. So what kind of reliability are you aiming to build into the system? Are we looking for something like 4 nines on intercept success? 99.99% reliability?
Obviously, you seek the highest possible. You begin with what you have and integrating those C2 networks and sensors, building up capabilities that are existing with an eye toward future capabilities that can come online as quickly as possible, not just ground-based, but space-based,
So
all
future,
aspects.
against future capability too. So do you
Correct.
believe that we can build a system that can intercept all incoming threats? You think we could build that system? This is a very hard physics problem.
You would know as well as anybody, sir, how difficult
So
this
we're-
problem is, and that's why we put our best people on it. We think the American people deserve it.
So let me tell you what I think we're facing here. You're
ongoing
talking
threats.
about hundreds of ICBMs launched simultaneously, varying trajectories, MIRVs, so multiple reentry vehicles, thousands of decoys, hypersonic glide vehicles, all at once. And considering what the future threat might be, it might even be more complicated than that. And you're proposing spending not just $25 billion, but upwards of, I think CBO estimated this at least $500 billion, other estimates, $1 trillion. I am all for having a system that would work. I am not sure that the physics can get there on this. It's incredibly complicated. So I want to get to another issue that you're facing here. How much of the staff of the Office of the Director of Operational Test and Evaluation did you cut?
After collaboration, sir, with the service departments, the joint staff, and others, we identified that as a place where there were redundancies and multiple additional layers that
I'll
were
tell you what you
unnecessary.
cut. You cut
So
74%.
Most of it. That's what I was going to say.
Most of it. And was your decision to cut more than half of the Pentagon's testing and evaluation office staff driven in part by concerns about the office's plan to oversee testing of Golden Dome?
The concerns were not specific to Golden Dome, sir. It was years and years of delays unnecessarily based on redundancies in the decision-making process that the services, COCOMs, and the joint staff, together with OSD, identified as a logjam
Mr.
that was
Secretary,
not helping
to
the process.
get
It
the
was slowing it down.
reliability we would need, you need something that's at 4 nines, 99.99% reliability with all these challenges. And you cut the staff of the people who are going to make sure this thing works before we make it operational, before we give it to the warfighters. You got to go back and take a look at this. But I also strongly encourage you to put together before we spend $25 billion or $175 billion or $563 billion or $1 trillion, put together a group of people to figure out if the physics will work. You could go down a road here and spend hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of the taxpayer money, get to the end, and we have a system that is not functional. That very well could happen. And you're doing this just because the president, and I understand your role as the Secretary of Defense. You got to execute what the president says. But this idea, might not be fully baked. And you can get in front of it now and figure out and find out if you put the right physicists on this. And I'm not saying go to the big defense contractors. I'm going to scientists and I know there's a questionable relationship with this administration and scientists, but go to some scientists, figure out what we would have to do to build a system, and then make smart decisions before we spend hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars.
Senator, we're doing that, leveraging existing technologies and not premising the project on aspirational technologies, what we can actually do, and would
Well,
welcome your input.
$25 billion
Thank you.
in the first year is a lot of money. That's more than just figuring out if we have the ability to build a system that can handle a full salvo threat, hypersonic glide vehicles, MERS, thousands of decoys. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Senator Kelly. Senator Sheehy.